Good evening, I'm Terry Rittmaster, and this is The Arts in New Jersey. And we have a very, very special program tonight. Human beings throughout all of history have left their marks on stone and metal to tell us a bit about their frustrations and loves and foibles, and to etch themselves on the sides of the earth and its materials for immortality. And it's probably one of the greatest forms of art that we know of. As a matter of fact, if I can just take a moment, in a few weeks we're going to have Dr. Livio Stecchini, the great expert on the Egyptian pyramids, who's going to be on the show. And Dr. Stecchini is going to talk about that great monument in Giza, the Great Pyramid. But our guest tonight is Erna Weill, a well-known and great sculptress, and we were going to look at a lot of her art and talk to her about her life. And we'll do that in just a minute after this message. Our guest this evening is Erna Weill, and welcome to Channel 3, Erna, and it's nice to have you here. Erna is a fine sculptress, and her art is all over the world, literally. Many of her pieces that we're going to see tonight can be seen at Fairleigh Dickinson University, and you can tell us where they are as we talk tonight. Many of your pieces, I understand, are in the Jewish Museum, and that's on 5th Avenue and 65th Street. Is that true?
That's right. There's one only, and but in other museums.
In other museums, and around on several synagogues in the area?
Yeah.
And in Israel?
In Israel, quite a lot.
Quite a lot. But we'll talk about where some of those are. Erna lives in Teaneck, New Jersey. And I have to say that we went down with some portable tapes. We have to make just a mention of that, and taped her studio and all the art in her beautiful home. And because of lighting problems and some technical problems, we aren't able to show the tape. So thanks to some nice photography that we're going to see in a few minutes, we're going to be able to see your art on slides. But I'm sorry that we couldn't show your home and all of your art that was down there, Erna. Let's go back and start from the beginning. You were born in?
I was born in Frankfurt, Germany, and there I had my first training of Helene von Beckerath, who was not only a good teacher, but she was a good sculptor, and she was herself a student of Rodin, and she did some very good realistic work. So, stop?
No, that's fine. And of course, when we see the slides, we'll see, I think, that the Rodin influences in some of your sculpturing. But it is true that all artists have influences from other fields. In your material that you put out, you're generally the artist, and the critics call you an expressionist. Maybe for our audience, you should talk a minute about what that expressionist field of art was and how that emerged in the 1920s and 1930s.
My philosophy of art is mainly that it has not only to express the feeling of the artist, but it has a mission, and this mission is to make the person who looks feel what art is about and what this special art is about.
And thus the word expressionism came in
and
on that
it
level.
Isn't abstract, because I could do abstract art if I wanted to, but I can't because it's against my whole philosophy.
In the whole field of sculpturing, and particularly massive sculpturing, you've done some large pieces. One seldom sees or hears of women doing that. You know, we think of men working with large pieces of stone and metal. Tell us a little bit of how you got interested in and how a woman works with that massive material. Is there any problem that results from that, or even your teacher was a woman?
That's right. But it's something which always strikes me when the response of most people who see it say to me, "Oh, this is so strong. I'm surprised you are a woman." But the strength in itself, I think, is similar to a strength of conviction. And it is not the physical strength, because now I'm older and I couldn't work hard anymore. So I try very often to get a way to form and to carve, which is not so strenuous, but still the response of everybody is, it is strong.
So it should be done by a man, right?
Yeah,
or something of that
more
nature.
or less.
Okay, let's turn now a little bit more on your background before we start to see your art here. Your story, of course, is a tragic story that involves the displacement of millions of people. You had to leave Germany with the rise of Hitler. Is that true?
That's true. And this will bring us to a piece which you show last,
Yes.
that we found a haven over here. And this haven really was somehow nearly the only way where we could go. I remember we sat in our dining room, had maps on the table of the world, and were trying to find a place where to go. We had 2 children, and this was, of course, the main goal, to educate them in a way which we were standing for. And we couldn't do this in Germany. And fortunately, we could get into America and found a place here.
Well, as we'll see in many of your themes of your art, the Holocaust, or what has come to be called the Holocaust, or the terrible treatment of the Jews by the Nazi Germans, is one of the many themes that you announce in your art. And so why don't we now sort of turn to your art, and we'll learn more about your life, I think, by looking at your art. Our first slide is that of Dr. Martin Luther King. And I know from seeing all of your work in your home that you have a deep sensitivity toward the black struggle in America and civil rights movement. How did you manage to get Dr. King to set for you? These are called portrait heads, and they're rather large in your home. I don't know if the audience can appreciate it on the television screen. Tell us a little bit about Dr. King and your interest in civil rights.
Now, I felt very strong about the courage, the humanitarian goals Dr. King had, and that made me feel that I should make his portrait. I met him at Fairleigh Dickinson in person first, and heard his lecture. Of course, I heard him often on television, but then in Fairleigh Dickinson they took photos of him from all angles, which made it possible for me to start the work. Dr. King had promised at that time to pose for me, but unfortunately he was killed shortly afterwards.
So in this case, you did it from photographs.
I did it not only from photographs, but this is a method which not many artists use. I use television.
Oh, yes, of course.
And I
We're
had
happy to
the
hear that
television set next to me, next to my stand when he was
And
interviewed.
making sketches and things?
No, I worked directly.
Directly with the material?
With the material.
And that is in what material is that?
There are 2 portraits in bronze. One is in his memorial in Atlanta, and the other one is at the Schomburg collection of the New York Public Library.
Let's take a look at the next one, along with the art of the black and civil rights in America. Here we have the head of Elie Wiesel.
This is Golda Meir.
This is who?
Golda Meir.
Oh, Golda Meir. Somehow our slides got it. All right, let's talk about Golda. How did you do her?
Now, with Golda, I got photographs and also worked from television at interviews. And then when I finished it, I brought it to Israel, and she had it at that time in her office.
I see.
Where it's now, I couldn't tell you exactly.
All right, let's take another look at one of your slides. And there we have, of course, the person that you have not just done in art, but you have a great respect. This is Dr. Linus Pauling, two-time winner of the Nobel Prize, and a friend of yours through all of this.
I wouldn't say friend.
Well, at least,
I don't.
Tell us how you got interested in doing Dr. Pauling.
I also, on account of his work for peace, which I endorse fully, I was very interested in his life, and then I wrote to him, and somebody else also introduced me, and I made a portrait bust. He came and sat very patiently 2 days in my studio, which I found wonderful because it gave me an opportunity to discuss all kinds of philosophies with him while I worked.
And he's quite able to do so, is
Oh,
he not?
he made me feel so, you know, easy that I was really discussing the philosophy of creativity in art and creativity in science.
Yes, indeed.
And
he's very interested in that.
Of course.
And of course, everybody watching who's a vitamin C advocate will know that he is the one that introduced the idea that vitamin C has all the great qualities. So in this case, you had Dr. Pauling right at your side. And of course, returning again to the various Jewish themes in your art, tell us a little bit about this menorah.
Now, this menorah is the original in full size, is in the White Plains Jewish Center on the outside wall.
That's is that bronze?
It's bronze and has a greenish sheen to it. And this piece, which you see in the picture now, is the small-scale model, which I also cast in bronze, and which went to the Israel Museum, and also to the former synagogue in Frankfurt, where we worshipped.
Very good. We'll be right back after this message.
Well, you have to cut out.
All right. And we're going on to look at some more of your sculpture and art. And there, of course, is one statement, very beautiful. It's the audience can see it in color, and I've seen it on the wall of your home. Tell us something about this statement about the Holocaust.
Now, this experience of the Holocaust gelled down with me in my mind in two Hebrew letters, and each of the letters represents people walking up a road. So it's walking upwards, because the translation of this Hebrew sentence is to the glory of God. So therefore, of course, that motion is upwards. At the very end is not a Hebrew letter, but a Nazi stormtrooper, or a symbol of him, throwing over these people a deadly weapon. And this piece is in the possession of the famous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Schneerson, to whom I gave it in great thankfulness, because he had helped me a lot.
It's very beautiful. And we'll go on to look now at the next one. You, in Germany, many people, perhaps seeing our show, will know of the name Kathy Kolditz, who became very, very famous for her mother and children themes. And of course, having seen your home and your studio, I was struck by how many mother and children themes we have here. Here's one example of it, and a very beautiful. What is, that's in stone, is that marble?
Yeah, no, it's a kind of, it's called green schist, which I think I only use, and I by chance got to use it.
Did you say you get that from Vermont, up in the
Yeah,
state of Vermont?
I bring my stone down from Vermont. Now this piece represents the sorrow and the flight of a mother, and I call it Vietnam. And a child holds on, crying to her gown. And there she runs, persecuted like so many people of the world, and don't know why.
Mm-hmm. I know it's a very beautiful piece and very sensitive. And there, of course, we have Jacob's dream. Tell us a bit about Jacob's dream. Great stories in the Bible, of course.
Yeah, of
Jewish
course.
literature.
Biblical stories gave birth to in many of my sculptures. Now, I don't go into telling the story when Jacob was on the mountain and dreamt, and the ladder went from earth to heaven, angels walking up and down, which is, of course,
And Jacob's ladder behind him there.
Yeah.
Right now, let's go on and look at the next one.
Symbolically, and
Nice
this is in the Jewish Center of Teaneck.
In the Jewish Center of Teaneck, thank you. And this, of course, is the three, we can't see it too well here. It's the, why don't we go on to the next one? That's sort of unclear here. There we go. This one, of course, has great meaning for you, and it's a beautiful piece. We were even going to see if we could get it transported out here today, but it's very, very heavy. Again, that's in that green stone, is it not?
Yeah, it's in a beautiful green stone, and the polished center is dark green.
And how do you get that polished gloss up there on your figures?
You use abrasives, all kinds of abrasives. Now, this is my experience coming to America, and on the right-hand side...
Buildings on the bottom, you have to explain. The one over...
That's right. On the right-hand side is the Empire State Building as a symbol coming to America. On the left is my spiritual home in Jerusalem, the Tower of David.
Right.
And this piece is somehow originally, I didn't do much with the outside stone. It looks like waves, like water surrounding everything. So,
and it's a large, large piece. Is that going to, is that commissioned, or is that going to go somewhere when you get it done, or is that, it's called Haven, and I think it's your piece, is it not?
Yeah, so far it's absolutely mine, and it's also when we celebrate our 40th anniversary being in America.
I see.
So that's why I did this.
Now, and our next piece is a beautiful piece that stands in your, out in your sort of alcove there with flowers behind it, and this is called Dialogue, is it not?
Right. It's a figure which represents the dialogue between the man and God, and it is, of course, connected deeply with Martin Buber's philosophy, and of which I hope you have the portrait.
Well, I think our portrait head of Martin Buber has gone by us, but we ought to mention that the great Jewish philosopher Martin Buber also sat for you as you did his head. Is that true? You knew Buber.
Very, very shortly, but he sent me photographs and I was able to create it. It's now at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem on Mount Scopus in the memorial.
We could have a whole
Martin
program about
Buber.
Martin Buber's influence on many of us in this century. He was such a brilliant man.
He was not only brilliant, he was one of the wise men.
Wise men of the world. And now we come back for our final look at some of your work, and I sure wish we could show many, many more, to look at the Haven again. And this is, of course, the one that you've just explained about the your journey. And do you go back to Israel?
I hope so. I hope in the fall. But so far I haven't decided yet. But I plan, really.
Oh, and here we've got, I'm sorry.
Yes, that's the civil rights
other struggle
group.
of the civil rights.
It is a memorial to the 3 men who were murdered in Mississippi.
In Neshoba County, right?
And this
Sworn
is also...
and Cheney.
Right. That was commissioned from Fairleigh Dickinson, and that is in Rutherford.
That is in the Rutherford Fairleigh Dickinson Library?
Yeah.
Okay, if one wishes to see it. All right. We only have a few minutes left to talk, so we just want to sort of ask you what your future is. What are you going to do? You're going to do some more sculpturing? And
Oh, yes.
I guess we can't properly tell how old you are, but your
can
age.
say
But
I'm
now
73.
You're 73 years old, and you're very, very active. And what are you planning to do with you?
Now, I also teach, and
Right.
I have morning and evening classes in my home, and there are already new pieces started. I made a large menorah and for one of my granddaughters, and she wanted it. And then also I did a lot of new work in stone. And this is, I never talk about it before it's born, because somehow it takes away from the spirit.
One thing, of course, is always puzzling about artists. Do artists go look at other artists' work? They're
Oh,
usually
sure.
And where do, can you give us some of what if you have an afternoon off and you can go see some art, what do you go look at? More sculptor or painting? Or?
Oh, I wouldn't say either one, whoever attracts me.
I think we didn't get a chance to cover it, but of course, you've done the sculptor heads of Leonard Bernstein, and
Right.
Rudolf Serkin and Claude Frank, and of course music means a great deal to you in your
Very
art. Why don't you
much.
just give us a couple of thoughts about that?
There was also a head of Milstein, and when I did his portrait the last time, I told him I need to have his expression exactly when he plays. So he played for me, and he played Bach, the a cappella piece for violin.
So you could get the expressions from his
And then the first moment, of course, I listened, but then I couldn't listen anymore, and I still could kill myself because I missed this beautiful
got distracted,
piece,
right?
and I had to work. I had to look at his face, and there was no way to absorb his music at this point.
Your students and friends know this, and so do I, and that's when one comes into your home is filled with rich and beautiful music because you like to work with Bach
Yeah.
and Beethoven and Mozart in the
Right.
background. So music is actually an inspiration to you in much of your...
Very much so. Music and religion,
Right.
I would say, and especially the philosophy of peace between men and a better future for everyone.
Well, your art will always be a reminder of the great search for decency and peace and beauty. I know after I walked away from your home, I was struck with your lifetime dedication to that. I'd like to thank you very, very much for being on the program and giving us an opportunity to look at your art. And people who wish to come and visit you and see your art at your home are welcome to contact you in Teaneck. Is that true?
That's
Because
right.
you have your sort of your own art studio right there
Yeah.
in your home. So that's a very beautiful experience, I can assure you. And Erna Weill's life is full of both sadness, but also joy and the love of life and the human spirit.
Right.
And I want to thank you again for being on the show to share these ideas with us. I wish we had more time to talk. I want to give special thanks to Jean Mogerly and Sue Turkani for the wonderful work they did with the photographs and slides. That's all right. You can just put it right back there. The world will forgive us for a little speaker that drops off. And thank you again, Jean and Sue. And thank you again, Erna. And we'll be back next week with the arts in New Jersey.